Hoki mai anō, welcome back. I'm joined now by our panel, business consultant Tim McCready, Stuff Senior Journalist Dileepa Fonseka, and AUT Associate Professor Ella Henry. Tēnā koutou, thanks for your time this morning. Let's talk immigration. Dileepa, you've been writing on this. So, look, Chris Farfoy seems to have been on the back foot on immigration for months. He's a no-show so far. What's going on there?
Well, he just doesn't seem to be across his portfolio. I mean, that's, the long and short of it. A lot of his, if he'd agreed to appear on your show today, are you confident you would have learnt anything from the appearance?
So you're saying that they've got nothing to say?
Yeah, they've got nothing to say, but also the answers, sometimes, they're mixing up immigration concepts. They're talking about, the expressions of interest queue when journalists are asking questions about, the residency queue. They're mixing, the situation with migrants outside the country with ones who are already here, and these issues are interlinked, but they are certainly giving off the impression that, or at least Farfoy is giving off the impression that he's not fully across all these issues.
It seems a real mess, and the problem for the government in this is the image of split families, Tim McCready. How damaging is that?
Oh, it's hugely damaging. Those stories are really heartbreaking. We heard from an architect and a jeweller, but it goes far beyond that. We've got people here that are skilled in IT and engineering. We need to keep them here. But they will leave, and it's not just split families. It's people that have elderly parents and want to go and see them, but that's not a possibility for them as well. So it's really challenging, but that will be damaging for New Zealand in the long term if we can't sort that out.
Yeah, but it's a balancing act, right, for the government, Ella. You want to keep the country safe, but you want it to perform as an economy. So they've got an impossible task.
Look, I couldn't agree.
Am I giving them too much?
More. There is probably not many other countries in the world that are doing any better in terms of opening their borders. But I do think there is, as you said, a case to answer around what is the strategy. We might be dealing with an ever-changing environment, but we do want to see political leadership around what are the processes in place to at least meet the objectives that were set prior to the pandemic.
So now we're talking about the great immigration reset, Dileepa, but we don't know anything about that, and we have no real time frame. Is that right?
Yeah, and after that announcement, we've not really seen many details about what it looks like. And in fact, if you were looking at this issue and you were trying to prioritise what we should be dealing with, what would have been the most important thing to have announced at that point? Would it have been to come to some kind of conclusion on these very urgent issues around the residency queue and letting the families in and give people some answers, or would it have been to sort of announce a vague kind of reset policy? Because, immediately after those, we saw a whole heap of policies that contradicted it, The great exceptions were for temporary type workers, seasonal workers, extending temporary visas. That's the opposite of the reset strategy, right? Which is to get businesses to invest more in capital by putting more pressure on their ability to bring in temporary workers.
Right. Okay. Well, this is opposition gold, isn't it, Ella Henry? So Erica Stanford is just like lapping it up, and how did she perform this morning?
Well, I certainly got a sense of her passion for the portfolio and the job in front of her, and I think that that's really important. I'd like to see a similar level of passion and commitment to what are we going to do to, we've done so well on so many fronts since the pandemic. Here's one area that requires strategic leadership and long-term vision, and I'd like to think that this first government that has had an absolute majority for, over 20 years might have the kaha to actually come up with that strategy.
Yeah, Tim, you were talking about, how crucial it is to have those skilled workers. Erica Stanford's answer is to, I'm just going to, you've got to clear the backlog and fix the machinery. Is that a bit naive? I'm just going to go in there and ride over the immigration bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's not. There's no easy fix, right? But there are other. There's other ways that this can be looked at. I think some of Erica's ideas are actually really interesting. They've put forward some ideas of to give people. To give people visas to be able to stay here.
Yeah, COVID contribution visa.
Yeah, and I think we should be thinking about that because these people have made a big difference to our economy over the last 2 years. Why not let them stay?
Well, actually, I would say that there are some easy fixes, and we should move on those. When it comes to the residency queue, that's been an issue since before COVID, right? And with the expressions of interest queue pause, which is what feeds migrant applications in there. We could easily make a start on that. And if you look at our history, we haven't really had a queue of this size.
Yeah.
And the reason is because of these, because of the inability to come to a decision on the target. The target's set too low, too many migrants coming in, offered too few places. We could easily fix that if we want to fix it.
All right. One last quick question on immigration. Will National have any kind of utility focus? I put that to Erica Stanford.
Yeah,
what do you think?
and she didn't answer it, but she did say she was going to go out and talk to Māori, which I think is an important starting point. I think at the moment National as a party is still working out what its relationship is with Māori. There's work to be done there. I'd like to think that some of those younger voices might begin to develop that relationship in a more meaningful way, but certainly the old guard are somewhat worrisome.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on to the other big story of the week. Is we're going to reopen, right? Yeah, hooray! But we're going to reopen in stages. Tim, do you think step by step is this the way to do it?
Oh, absolutely. I think the one thing that business has been really calling out for is some sort of certainty. And the framework that has been put forward, while it may not be fixed on dates, it does provide a pathway and it provides some certainty. And in the past week, I've been talking to a lot of business leaders about what they think about what's been put forward, and everyone's thrilled that there's something. And as Rob Fife said, whether that means, for this trial that's coming up, if it means you've got to wear a wristband, or there's a Western Australia app that within 5 minutes, you get a message and you have to send a geotagged selfie of yourself to show that you're in.
So there's technologies.
That sort of technologies, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think we need to start trialling that and we need to get moving on it.
Okay, but David Skegg warned, it could be all for nothing, right, Dileepa? Because David Skegg warned this week, we're going to have an outbreak before the end of the year. And this week, it seems like we dodged a Tauranga Delta bullet, didn't we?
Yeah, things can change very quickly with COVID, right? So we've got to be willing to... I think we've all got to look at this plan as this is the plan potentially at the moment, but it can be significantly revised. And in fact, I think the report also had to be revised when the Delta strain came up. There's a lot of things that can change with the Delta variant, much more sort of virulent, and even the vaccine won't necessarily reduce the number of cases, but will reduce, hospitalizations from it. But
so the vaccine is key, right? Now let's talk about vaccination rates. So there's no target set by the government on vaccination rates before we open up. It's just like David Skegg wants everybody. That's not going to happen. He wants the government's target is everybody should be offered the jab, but at the same time we've got poor workers in Tauranga who are not vaccinated at all. So how are we going to bridge that gap? Ella, what do you think?
Better data management is a first start. I find it really sad that a number of ministries don't actually know levels and percentages, even of frontline workers who have been vaccinated or not. I don't have a solution because, as you said, it's a moving landscape. We literally don't know what's going to happen next. All I know is you're not welcome in my house unless you've been vaccinated.
Right. Is that the sign over your door?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, should that be a sign over New Zealand? Should that be a sign over all businesses? Is that how you are going to encourage people who are vaccine hesitant to do it?
Well, I think everybody should be offered it, right? And we have to offer them within a reasonable period of time. The tricky question is, what do you do if people refuse?
Yeah.
And I think if they have been given, fair warning, this has got to be a whole of New Zealand effort. There's a whole bunch of people in the economy. The advertising firms have got to get in and start promoting this. Start promoting people taking vaccines and making people more comfortable with it. Singapore was running huge ad campaigns right through and all kinds of initiatives to try and get people jabbed. And I think we've got to just have a bit more effort into this.
And I think the thing for New Zealand is, and for the whole world, is that it's that message that we only win when everybody gets across the finish line. So all of us have a part to play in that and encouraging people to get.
But the thing is, trying to get everybody to get across that finish line. Okay. So how do we do it? Do we offer rewards? Do we offer sticks of you can't, like we're saying, like Ella's saying, you can't come into my house, you can't come into my restaurant unless you've been vaccinated.
It's a carrot and stick approach, isn't it? We know from policies in the past that sticks don't really work. And so word of mouth, I'm appalled by some of the anti-vax messaging I'm seeing on social media from people whom I think are sane and sensible.
Right.
And so I guess we have to work at a personal level. Last year we were a team of 5 million. This year we might be a team of 3.5.
But the thing is, on that particular point, what you say, anti-vax messages from sane and sensible people, but it's the hesitancy of the long game here. So the common argument is, I don't know what this vaccine's going to do in 5 years.
Yeah, they're in in this whole debate, we've had a lot of people mentioning, and political levels, that you've got to have those one-to-one conversations. We're not having them at the moment. We're not even really properly having a conversation across the mass media about it. I mean, you don't really see that much, advertising about it. Goes to my point, I guess, earlier. We are not, I think, reaching in. I know people who they're not, I wouldn't call them vaccine skeptics or vaccine anti-vaxxers. They're just hesitant.
Right.
They're just, I'll wait and see.
And what do they say? Why not?
Yeah, they say, I'll just wait and see. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. They've heard various things during the pandemic about different, and everybody is confused about this vaccine issue. And I think we just need to go back and try and clarify it for a lot of people.
What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I think, going back to what I said, I think all of us have a part to play. I think in the coming weeks, when younger people are starting to be offered the vaccine, social media will start to really play a big part. In America at the moment, in particular communities, they're using micro-influencers to reach communities that are hesitant, to try and get that number.
Micro-influencers.
Influencers that are, in small communities, but that people will respect and listen to. And we're going to have to get to that point once we see these pockets of communities that are hesitant.
I couldn't agree more. The millions spent on large-scale advertising could actually equally be spent on those micro-influencers with social media profiles.
I'm going to have to wrap it up there for the moment. We've solved all the COVID problems just like that. Ella, Dileepa and Tim, thank you very much for your time. All right, we're back with our panel, Tim McCready, Dileepa Fonseka and Ella Henry. Thanks for your time again. This week, the lights went out in some parts of the country. Dileepa, is that acceptable?
No, and I mean, if it happens on a regular basis, you're probably going to see political implications from it, right? I think in this case, there seem to have been some specific miscommunications from Transpower around the issue. But I think there's a longer-term issue here around electricity generation and how we're going to incentivize these renewables and moving towards fully renewable electricity. Because, with the emissions trading scheme and everything like this, even methods like coal and gas are going to get more expensive as, get more expensive. Carbon price goes up. So we are going to have to come up with, a way of incentivizing these generators to move towards, much more renewable.
But in the meantime, everybody used it as an opportunity to blame somebody else, didn't they, Tim? I mean, you've got Megan Wood saying, it's Genesis, Transpower apologising, the gas lobby saying, we can't rely on renewables.
Yeah. Wasn't it the night of the outage? There was blame going everywhere, and then we've just seen it continue over the last week, where everyone's sort of got their hand up trying to point at somebody else for their own reason. What's the answer? It's complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated. Does anybody actually understand the electricity market? I mean, I sure don't. No? Very few.
Everybody on brownout night was an expert on electricity. Yeah.
But nobody knows how to fix it. All right, well, that's something we also need to fix. It's something called the climate, right? So the IPCC had its report out this week, Code Red for Humanity, according to the UN. Ella, shouldn't this have been the biggest story for the week?
I absolutely agree. I have grave concerns for our species. I mean, the planet will survive us.
Yeah, it's just humanity.
But will we survive our planet? That's the ultimate question moving forward. And I am genuinely concerned that we may reach that point where we cannot fix it. And I don't know what it'll look like.
But one of the problems is that because it's an ongoing or pervasive issue that we really don't know how to fix just overnight, Tim, it just gets put on the back burner. We have a headline, we move on.
It does, and you're right. The headlines sort of disappeared this week because of the Tauranga, potential cases in Tauranga, the energy outage, all of that. But yeah, I think one thing that is quite heartening is it is becoming mainstream. People are talking about this. Younger people are definitely talking about this, but also we're seeing increasingly, sustainability, sustainable business, ESG metrics coming into play for businesses.
What does that mean? What's an ESG metric for something?
So it's considering environmental and social aspects of business and really explaining what you're doing to make a difference. And investors and consumers are really looking at what businesses are doing now. So I think we are seeing a bit of a shift. New Zealand's hosting APEC at the end of this year, and one of the key themes for APEC is sustainability and climate change. So we're going to have a lot of discussion about that here.
This is going to start hitting not just our planet, which is the most important consideration, but it is going to start hitting people in their back pocket.
Yeah.
Because, recent APEC kind of forum event, they were around the agricultural industry, they were discussing the impact this was going to have on demand for agricultural goods if we can't get, the carbon emissions related to agriculture down. There may be consumers who are less reluctant to consume. The carbon price is going to go up.
So as a species, unless it hits us in the back pocket, we don't do anything about it.
That's the
that
worrying.
Is normally That's normally how it goes. Yeah.
That's how it works? Yeah. Okay, all right. So let's move on to a really big issue, okay? A really big issue. Ella, the Winston Churchill painting that the Greens wanted to remove, National kicked up a fuss about it. How do you read that?
Much ado about nothing. Clearly the government must have been doing quite well if that was the only thing they could complain about this week.
But is National sort of, embedding itself in this sort of like culture war? They say, the Greens wanted to remove it because Winston Churchill had some racist overtones. So is it part of their strategy, or are they just jumping on anything?
It does feel like they're jumping on anything. You get, when I think a period about 5 or 6 years ago, there were about 3 movies about Winston Churchill coming out. Maybe it was 10 years ago, around the time of the Iraq War or something like that. There were a bunch of, and so it had its kind of cultural time. I think they have been getting some wins in recent weeks around a lot of different issues. Some of the failures, kind of the ports, this immigration, issue, and even the brownout. Should have been a massive opportunity for them to point
Julia
at
Collins is a former energy minister, right? So she had stuff to say.
It should have been an opportunity, yeah. And so I think the thing is, when you're in the opposition, it is hard to get attention, and so sometimes you do go a little bit out there and try and put, I guess the old analogy was a dead cat on the table, right? You throw a dead cat on the table, everybody starts talking about the dead cat. But the thing is,
Churchill's a dead cat.
But there's got to be a strategy. There's got to be a strategy.
I was really surprised to see that there's a petition on some of the National MPs' page to bring back the Winston Churchill painting. I mean, so clearly that is
really,
yeah. So clearly it is an issue that matters to some.
But it's been moved, not removed.
Well,
it's simply going to another public place. Surely, if we believe the Greens.
That's called detail.
Sorry.
Finally, one last thing, one for you, Tim. How big of a miss is it that Amazon is taking Lord of the Rings away? Did Stuart Nash stuff up on this?
I think it's a combination of, perhaps we could have done a bit more. Our border restrictions doesn't make it easy for filming here. People need to come and go a little bit more easily than they've been able to. So I think there's a few reasons that has happened.
Okay.
A big miss, though.
All right, a big miss. All right, I think we're just going to have to leave it there for the time. Thanks very much, Tim, Dileepa and Ella, for the time on the panel today. And that is all from us for now. Thank you so much for watching. Ngā mihi nui, and we will see you again next weekend.